Welcome to Automation Rehab's Marketing Podcast. Our mission is to empower every person on the planet that is interested in digital, social, or offline marketing to hone their marketing edge, overcome challenges, and help others find their passion in business growth. We discuss the products and services of entrepreneurs and how they're helping more people. We support listeners by providing influencer strategies to expand and sustain their presence while growing their business. Our aim is to be humorous, cool, and entertaining. The bottom line is it's all about getting in front of more people in less time, with less effort, and making a difference. So here's your host, Sean Snowday.
Hello and welcome to the VirtualEventsOnDemand.com Summit. My name is Sean Snowday. I'm the founder and the voice of the virtual event, VirtualEventsOnDemand.com Summit. I'm the founder and the voice. And we have Janet Ickes on the line with us. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this segment, we're going to be going over budgeting. So just before we get into it, tell us a little bit about you and your company and what you do.
Absolutely. As I said, thank you for having me. I'm Janet Ickes, and my company is Excel with Me Training and Consulting. I spent over about 20 plus, we'll just leave it plus, years in corporate America. And in that time frame, I was in payroll, accounting, HR, all of that fun stuff, and found that I really wanted to get out of corporate America. Had that opportunity about 8 years ago. And we moved from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, and I got to walk away from corporate. But what I got to bring with me to North Carolina was my love of training folks, helping folks to really manage their money, make sure that they've got systems in place. I'm known for systems and figuring things out and streamlining things. And that's what I absolutely love to do. And that's where Excel with Me was born, is I found out the small business owners that I was networking with weren't quite sure what questions to ask, what direction to go. And when it came to money, they glossed over. And when it came to accounting, they really glossed over. So I've had that opportunity to start sharing with them and bringing the corporate knowledge to the small business owner and getting the systems in place so that they can move forward.
All right. Okay. Well, you have full freedom to go over your complete thing and anything you want.
Cool. Well, I'm so glad to be here. And we're going to talk about budgeting. And I love numbers. I'm a little weird. I love $100 bills coming my way and keeping them in my pocket versus handing them over. So that's kind of where I want to kind of start with. And of course, we're talking about virtual events and thinking about what we've got to be doing. So we're just going to kind of touch some spots here and we're going to keep on going forward. So I'm calling this Budgeting 101. So one of the first things when you think of a budget, short of not glossing over, because we're not going to do that today, we're going to have some fun with it. We want to think, why do we want to budget? Well, why? Why do we care? Well, one of those things is when you know your numbers, it makes all the difference. It absolutely makes a difference. Why? Because when you know your numbers, you start setting yourself up for success. And I'm guessing if you're doing this event and you're putting all this time and effort into it, you absolutely want to make sure you're setting up for success. And that's what we're doing. So by doing that, we're going to start making good informed decisions because we're going to have financial clarity because we know we're putting all the puzzle pieces together. If you think about a budget, it's kind of like the puzzle pieces, trying to figure out what's going on. But when we actually know what these numbers are, we can get that understanding. And I don't know about you, but when I have good information in front of me, I make better decisions. If I'm just reactive and trying to guess and not really sure, I don't make the best of decisions. I don't know about you, but I really don't. I've gotten myself in some trouble doing that. So what I want to do is take a step back and be proactive, not reactive. And by doing a budget, that's what you can do. So we can identify where our revenue is coming from, where are our different sources, how are we going to touch these people, how are we going to find these people, what direction are we going in? And then, of course, all the costs. We've got lots of crazy things that we've got to deal with. There's all kinds of things when you're thinking about the big picture and all those little details. And by doing this budget, we can make sure that our event is financially viable. I'm guessing you want it to be positive and we want to have some money left over when we get done. And one of the ways we can do that is implementing that budget. And of course, we want to limit our risk. We don't want to run out of funds. That's not the direction that we want to go. And once we know what's going on, then we can start allocating our resources more efficiently. all of this coming together, most of the time, by the time I get to this point, everybody's about to hear. They're done. They have no idea what direction we're going to go on. So where we're going to go is this. There's a little saying that I was taught. I do Mary Kay, and I've had a lot of years in the Mary Kay world. And she always told us something when we were overwhelmed. And she said, how do you eat an elephant? I don't know if anybody's ever heard that or not before, but how do you eat an elephant? And we're all looking at like, oh boy, here we go. Well, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So that's what we're going to do. Is we're just going to take one little bite. We're going to start focusing in and take one little step, one bite at a time. So first thing I'm going to do is budget. I'm going to challenge folks to say it's a 4-letter word. And people really think I'm crazy when I spell budget with 4 letters. And I can see the looks on faces. You really think I'm crazy. Here's why I say that. If you start thinking about a budget being a 4-letter word, a budget is simply that. That letter starts with a P, followed by an L, followed by an A, followed by an N. That's all a budget is. A budget is simply a plan. It's not written in stone, but it needs to be written down. A budget is simply a plan to make sure that you've set yourself up for success. So now that we kind of think about that, and what do we need to consider? There's so many different things to consider and directions to go in. So some of the key considerations that we're going to talk about when you're thinking about your budget and you're starting to think of all of these pieces that are coming into play is we've got different considerations to consider. So what are they? Technology and platform. No matter what you're doing, there's going to be some type of technology involved and platform costs, streaming sources, hardware requirements, different licenses and software. All of that factors in to the cost of your event. In addition to that, of course, you've got some marketing and promotional expenses. It includes costs for your social media, your advertising, your email, your marketing, your paid promotion, graphics designs. The list goes on and on. This one can get crazy if you're not careful. So that's another reason why you want to really kind of hold on to that budgeting, because you just don't know. But we need to know where we're going, and we need to be able to put all of these pieces together. So we've got to consider that as well. In addition to that, what are some other things that we've got to consider? Our content creation and speaker fees. That's going to be all those expense for covering the various presenters coming in, hiring speakers, as well as the purchasing and licensing of the different content. So there's different costs associated there as well. In addition to that, what about support and staffing? That also is a consideration. Where are you at? What kind of costs are involved with that? How much staff do you need? Is it virtual? Is it on stage? What all are we involving and what all are we doing? You've got to have different staff and support in order to be able to make this run smoothly. In addition to that, what about keeping the audience engaged? There's various different tools that are available and out there. Are you doing surveys? Are you doing different polls? Are you doing different? It all depends on what you want to do, what direction you're going in. But all of these little pieces all end up having costs associated to them. And the trick is trying to figure out and estimate these costs before you roll into it so you have an idea of what's going on. So thinking about that. So there's all kinds of different things to go. And there's always this one, whether we like it or not. I always want to encourage anyone that I work with, anyone that I speak to, I want you to be thinking of this one because this is the one people forget. And that's just the contingency fund. Because I don't know about you, but I'm never going to get it right the first time. I might get it close, and that's the goal. But you've got to build in a contingency fund as well, because things are going to pop up. Things are going to surprise you. Things are going to come out that you just didn't think of. I don't care the best laid plans. Something's going to show up. So we want to also build that into when we're building out our budget. We want to make sure we have some contingency available for us. So thinking about that, these are some of the considerations to go with. So now we're going to go ahead and start thinking about the next steps. Okay, that's one piece of it. Kind of a little crazy, but okay, let's keep on going. So what else do we need to be considering? We need to start planning our budget. So how do we do that? One of the things is we've got to make sure we have tasks and various due dates and all those kind of things all factor in here as well. But one of the biggest things when you're dealing with this budget and you're starting to plan is you got to make sure your objectives and goals of your event are aligned with your budget. And when you're considering that, then you can start using your budget as a roadmap for those financial decisions. And as I said, one of the things that we really want to make sure that we're doing is a timeline. So at that timeline, we really want to start getting detailed. The more detailed you can get, the better off you're going to be, but you don't want to get so detailed that you never get any work done. So what we're going to do is when we're thinking about planning and we're starting to align all of this and we're making our roadmap and we're coming forward, here's our timeline. We've got dates, tasks, numbers, everything all pulling together. And what we're going to do is get this written down. Because that's one of the keys is we want to make sure we have everything documented so that we can start figuring out the direction that we're going in. Considering that, so let's talk about a little bit of a timeline, because one of the things that I find happens very often is we can budget all day long, but guess what? There's all kinds of different tasks and timing, and my dog just decided to join us, but that's okay. He must be getting involved with these tasks and timelines as well, but that's okay. As we're going, what are kind of timelines? So one of the things I want you to start thinking about as you're building out this budget is we've got to come up with a timeline. So I'm going to throw out an example here as we're starting to build this up and we're starting to be thinking of things. All of this factors in to the end result. So what are we going to do? I'm saying 3 months out. So we're just going to target like 3 months as we're going. When we start thinking about our budgeting timeline, we've got to figure out our objectives and goals for our event. What are we trying to get? Is this going to bring in $100,000? Is this going to be bringing in $200,000? Are we going to be offering some charity? What all pieces? What is our goal of this event? And when we ID the purpose and what we want to achieve financially, then what we do is we reverse engineer. Here's the funny thing in accounting. You start with the end to figure out how to get there. You reverse engineer everything. And that usually gets people, because everybody wants to go, how do we get there? How do we get there? You go to the end first. You go to the end and then you start going backward to figure out how to get to the end result. So in the first week or two here, you're really identifying what is your purpose? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve financially? Then once we understand that, then we can start building in a preliminary budget draft. So that's when we're going to start, okay, now that I know where I want to go, how am I going to get there? So the first step that we've got to start putting into play is researching our potential vendors, platforms, services, etc. We've got to start getting those quotes out there. We've got to start getting all the research. What options do we have? What can we consider? What is available to work with? Is this a live event? Is this virtual? Do we need Zoom? Do we need Streamline? What do we need? What do we need to work with? What tech is involved? What is it that it's going to take to get us there? Those numbers are what start your draft. So now we're starting to get some budget numbers. We're starting to figure out, okay, here's some of the options. You're starting to get an idea of what it's going to cost for the platforms, for the vendors, for the lodging, for whatever it ends up being to actually produce this event. So that's in the first month. And we haven't even gotten to this. We still got several more months to go, but that's where we're getting started. So as we're looking at that, once we get that into place and we start to get a guidance and we start to get a direction, now we can say, okay, here we go. So let's kind of go forward and see the direction. So what about month 2? We've got all of this. We've got all these pieces. I'm just going to encourage you, jot them down. Get a simple thing as an Excel spreadsheet and just start documenting. Get it in some kind of a format that's organizable so that you can start seeing what's happening. Because now that you've got the research and you've got potentials, now in month 2, you got to start detailing this out. You start going to see really what is it truly going to cost you to produce this event, to have this event to where you want to go. What's it going to take to make sure that we make what we're looking for financially, our goals and our objectives? So right back to where we're at. The end is starting to reverse engineer and starting to help us to get there. So in month 2, we're really diving into those quotes, into the proposals. We've got to evaluate all that. We've got to figure out exactly what we need. So we're reviewing, we're evaluating, we're getting the pricing reputation of folks. We are really diving into all of those various quotes, seeing what works, looking at the specifics, figuring out what direction that we're going to go in, what do we need, what features, and the list goes on and on. You can see it can get kind of time consuming, but that's okay because you're going to be organized and we're going to do this one step at a time or one bite at a time. Once we get all through all of that and we make our determinations and we decide the direction that we're going to go, we're going to go ahead and finalize the budget. And that's where we're going to start really detailing out what are the costs that are associated with this event. What all do we need to consider? What kind of things are out there that we've got to contend with? We're going to start writing these down. We're going to start getting a tool that's going to help us to make sure we identify what it's going to cost. And also the revenue sources. Where's our revenue coming in from? Is it coming in from network events? Is it coming in from social media? Is it coming in from all of the above? All of those pieces are now where we need to go so that we can start seeing what is in front of us so that we can make sure we land where we want to go. So of course, then month 3, this one's pretty straightforward. We're going to go ahead and just secure everything and keep an ongoing expense tracker and ticket sales. This is a work in progress. A budget is a living document throughout your event. It is something that you're going to be looking at and reviewing and adjusting and monitoring as you go. So as ticket sales are coming in, we have the revenues there. We know exactly what's going on. A ticket map is a great way to do that. That simply can be something as simple as a spreadsheet that will allow us to see as tickets are being sold, where we at? Are we close to goal? Are we anywhere near it? Do we need to double our efforts up in advertising? What direction? That's the importance of doing this. And this is something that you do ongoing. As the expenses become more secure and we know exactly what the costs are going to be, we need to get all that documented. All of these pieces are all coming together to be able to make this a success. And that's our ultimate goal. So how in the world do we do that? How do we do that? How do we estimate a lot of these costs? How do we start figuring it out? It kind of boils down to research. You got to do a lot of research up front. You've got to see what your options are. You've got to see what those potential vendors and service providers can offer. What options do you have? What direction can they go in? What location is a huge one? Virtual, stage, what are you up against? So you really got to dive into getting quotes, getting proposals, understanding what options are available to you. And of course, once you get to there, then you can start negotiating. It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they're going to say is no. It doesn't hurt to ask for what you want. As I said, worst it is a no. But then you know exactly what your options are and what you can do. And then, of course, as you're going from there, you can keep the record of all those estimates and tracking. As crazy as it sounds, even if it's a no, I want to encourage you to keep a list of it. If you're using Excel to track everything, just keep it on a little extra tab, maybe at the end, because you never know. If plan B doesn't quite work out or you need something else, you can have that information at your fingertips. And that's one of the goals, is we want to make sure that we have things at our fingertips so that we can pivot and adjust as we need during this event, because things are going to happen. Nothing ever goes perfectly as planned. At least in my world, never has happened in all of these years. I suspect that's going to be the case there. So why not prepare for it and mitigate what you can? So keep your records handy. Try to keep them organized using some type of a system. And you'll hear me say that a lot. I'm a huge fan of getting the right system in place. And I always get asked, what's the best system? And it's always the same response. You know what that response is? It's always the same when you ask me, what is the best system? It's simply the one you're going to use. You've got to have one that you are going to use, and that's what's going to make the difference. And there's multiple ways to get there. So as we're doing this and we're thinking about all of this, what are some best practices to consider as we're setting up all of this craziness and this budget and this overwhelming thing that we're just going to do one bite at a time? So one of the things is we got to start prioritizing expenses. You've got to really figure out which expenses are going to directly impact your event's success. And they got to be at the top of the list. You got to cover those first. Those are musts. There's going to be musts and there's going to be, I really would like. And then there's going to be, yeah, that'd be nice. So as you're thinking about all of these expenses coming in, you've got to have them prioritized. What are the essential ones? We absolutely have to cover those. Then there's okay, yeah, we want to kind of, this would be really nice. I'd really like to have this would be, but it's not absolute. You get a little wiggle room in there. And then you can start working your way through what options that you have. So as you're prioritizing that, you've got that down, you kind of know what's going on. Guess what? You get to monitor and adjust it every time. Once again, the budget is a living document. It is absolutely a living document. You're going to be monitoring and adjusting based upon life, based upon the world that we're dealing with, based upon the folks that are coming in, based upon all of the different factors that are coming. You just keep working through it. And if you have the template and the plan and everything sitting in there, you just simply make the adjustments. You keep monitoring and you adjust it. And by doing that, you're going to ensure much more success as you continue to plan and move forward. Remember that other one I said? You got to build in a contingency. There's always that. We've got to build in a little bit of unforeseen expenses because there's always ones in the best laid plans. Something's going to come up that we didn't account for. And of course, as you're doing the best practices, don't forget to negotiate. Don't forget that you can negotiate a contract. Why not ask? That is definitely an option. In addition to that, you want to maybe be able to seek some sponsorships and partnerships. Why not work together and see how that can be worked out? They can offset some of the cost, increase your visibility, increase their visibility, make it a win-win situation. That's the ultimate goal, is a win-win situation. And those are some of the best practices as you're starting to build out this budget and kind of work your way through it. So what else can you think about? We've got to talk about tools. We've got to talk about tools, whether we like it or not. How in the world, or what do we even consider? What options are out there? Quite a few. I always think that it's like a whack-a-mole. Like there's always kind of different tools out there. And I know, you end up doing a lot of different technology. You probably have me well beat in that. And there's so many to choose from. What's the best? Once again, it kind of goes back to which one are you going to be used and which one's going to give you the features that you need to be able to make this work. It's a trade-off. Time, tools, expense. You get to factor all of that into this craziness as well. So what kind of options do we have? When you're thinking about a budget, you can go back to trusty old Excel and Google Sheets. I am not a Google fan. Google does not like me. I love Excel. As I mentioned, 20 plus years in corporate America, Excel is my second language. However, either way works. But what's the bottom line? What's the benefit of a spreadsheet? One, it takes the math out. Most folks, you can type on a calculator all you want, do it 100 times. I've had folks, when I've been talking with them, they're trying to do their taxes, and next thing they know, they're on a calculator and you got that big long tape out, and that's not what we want to do. When we're doing this, we need to at least get the right tools in place. It can be as simple as an Excel sheet or Google sheet where you have everything documented. You can organize it in a fashion that you can get your information. And guess what? You put the right formulas in, it does the math for you. So you can make little tweaks very easily, and you know exactly where you're at and what direction. You can create custom templates. You can do things that you can have pre-made budget items that are out there and they're available online. You can then create them and specialize them to what you need. You can pretty much make Excel do what you need to have done. Google, most days, but it could be just me. As I said, I'm an Excel girl. But anyhow, but there's different features and options that are available. So at least take advantage of that. Some of the other things when you're thinking about events, how are you coordinating ticket sales and things? You can use something as simple as Eventbrite. That is an option that is out there. I mean, you use what works for you. Where are you at in this event? How big is the event? What is your budget? What are you up against? Eventbrite is an event. It's a simple one. It has ticketing services available with some basic, simplistic options that are there. You can track your expenses and your ticket sales right within the platform. It is definitely an option. And it does have some reporting capabilities that are there. So you have some basics. It is definitely an option. There's various tools out there. As I said, whack-a-mole, all kinds of different options. If you're a little bit more, and maybe you already use as a small business owner, maybe you're already using QuickBooks Online. If you have QuickBooks Online in the Plus version, guess what? You already have a budget in there. The trick is most folks don't realize it's in there because it's not turned on by default. I didn't create the program. I just use the program. But if you're using QuickBooks Online, that is an option. You can create a budget for your event. And guess what? As your expenses, as long as they're coded properly as they're coming in, you can be running reports in an instant and finding out exactly where you're at. It makes it simple. If you need to invoice and out, QuickBooks can take care of that. So that's just one more piece of a software. But with each one comes expense, comes understanding. And these are things that you've got to consider because not everybody is a one size fits all. But that is definitely an option. And everything is housed financially. If everything's in QuickBooks, everything is there, everything auto connects. There's a lot of perks to that if that's an option for you. It's very useful on the financial side. Of course, you can kind of tell that's more my strength, but that's okay. We're going to keep talking about some other things because you know what? That may not be a fit for everybody. You can just go to some online templates. There are so many templates that are out there that get started. Google Excel, Google different things, and just search for them. Start where you're at. There's templates everywhere. The bottom line is you've got to use something. You've got to find a tool that's going to work, that's going to help you be able to track all of this. It's like a puzzle pieces. You've got 1,000 pieces sitting on the floor here, and you've got to put this puzzle together, which is a successful event. You know what you're looking for because you've already got your objectives there. But we still got to get the pieces in the right orders and make it look like where we want to go. And we can do that with the right tools. So with very formulas and taking advantage of that. So as you're thinking about that, but I want you to consider a couple things. I mentioned a system. You've got to have a system in place. And there's something I always talk about when I'm talking about a system, because they're like, well, why do I need a system? And my answer usually is the same, because I'd like to, wouldn't you like to save yourself some time, energy, and money? If that's the case, then you need a system. And a system will allow you to help budget and make sure you have the numbers in front of you so that you know exactly what's going on. But there's a couple things to remember when you're picking that tool, that system. What is the size and complexity of your event? That will dictate. Some of the features may or may not work. Some of the may provide what you need or not. You also need to consider your familiarity with that software. QuickBooks can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. Excel can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. Any of them can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. What's your familiarity? What support do you have behind you that will help you to take full advantage of that tools and software that you have? In addition, consider your team. If you got to have collaboration needs, what are they? Do you need to use something like Microsoft Teams? Do you need to use something like Slack? Do you need to be using, what do you need to be using? You've got to have something that everybody can work together. And as I mentioned, every software comes with a little price tag. Every little feature probably has a little higher price tag, and they all work together. But we've got to find one that's going to fit your budget with the necessary features that you need. So you've got to figure out what tool is going to align with your event budgeting requirements that's going to give you the necessary features for tracking expenses, revenue, and the overall financial performance of this event. You need to know what's going on because you need to know what you can tweak, what worked, what didn't. And the only way to do that is to have a good system in place. So thinking about that, I want you to leave you a quote. I want you to be thinking about this. And it's from Dave Ramsey. And I always like to think about this when I talk about budgeting. Talked about it being a 4-letter word. In his words, he simply says, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And that's the reasoning that we need to do this. This is why we needed it. Well, why not be proactive, not reactive? And when you are, you start to ensure the success of your event. Now, I do have an option. If you don't like this option, it's just too overwhelming. One of my 4-legged fur babies has said that he would gladly help you with your money as it comes in. If that is something of interest, he is more. This is Winston. He loves $100 bills, and he's more than willing to help you. But nonetheless, hopefully you had a little bit of fun here and you've got some little bit of nuggets as you're going. And I'd love to offer, I've got some tips that I put together, about 24 little tips to kind of give you an idea of what to be thinking about. Maybe some of those things that not quite as obvious when you're thinking about budgeting and all of these different things. So I've got about 20, 25 of those. I think we're getting close on time. I know Shona should be getting close in there. Can I pop a link in there that we can go ahead and see if I can get to this link easily enough? Because, who doesn't love tips and thinking about it that it's already done for you? Now, the trick is getting this copied and pasted, because I think I lost it I'm going to stop the share and go ahead and pull that in, and we will go ahead and do that. And that way I can know I can get to it and we'll have that opportunity. Can I put it in the chat? Is that the easiest way to do that? Okay, perfect.
Sure.
Awesome. Then we'll go ahead and do that. And if I can get the mouse to drive over, we can do that. Yeah, well, look at that. Gotta love technology when it works.
Yeah.
There. We may not at the rate we're going, but it's okay. I'm going to get it to come up here and we're going to get it, because that's part of it. As I said, life always happens. Things never work quite as planned. I imagine you've probably run into that more than I have. Somehow it just never works as planned.
Every morning.
Yeah, exactly. But the cool thing is you simply just work with it. You figure it out and you make it pop in there and go anyway.
There it goes.
There we go. We got it.
Okay, so this is the 24 budget tips for your next virtual event.
Yeah.
And we have the link available for you. So what else is here? I clicked on the wrong thing. So you have this for an offer, but tell us a little bit more about what you do, and your offer is also going to be this free gift, which is the 24 budget tips for the next virtual event. But what other offers do you have?
I work with a lot of the small business owners who really want to focusing on profit. That's their biggest thing. So they've got their business growing, everything's moving forward, but what they're not doing is being proactive and really focusing in on the profits, understanding those reports, working in, a lot of them use QuickBooks Online. That's fabulous. We do bookkeeping for folks as well. But they just don't focus on the profits because they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know. So what we do is we really focus in on profits and we start proactive. So I bring in the profit first concepts and apply that to their business so that moving forward, they are very successful and they can grow their business and actually what they need to be, not just the income and expense. It starts there. But this roller coaster that they're on, I want them to enjoy the ride of the business roller coaster that is just part of it. It's definitely a roller coaster ride, but
yeah, my thing, like you said about with all the technical stuff, I hired, okay, never hire a relative. Now that that's been said, I hired my little niece. I remember telling her, you got to be on the phone with one of my private clients Friday at, let's say, 2 p.m. So then Friday at 2 p.m., I'm like, where are you? Oh, I'm at 21 for Forever 20 or what? What do you? And because I paid her in advance, right?
Yeah,
I'm like,
that didn't either.
yeah, but I mean, I get paid in advance, so I thought she should learn how to do that. So then the thing is that that I have all of this software. So I just found out that I have JotForm, but I had another app that I didn't know that I had that I've been paying for a year in advance for the past 3 years. With my little niece, I put her through Hootsuite training, which was like $450, but then they do recurring every year, and I didn't know that. So then, like 4 years later, I'm like, I gave you guys $2,000, and because there's some of people like me that we're just not paying attention to it because there's just so much. It's overwhelming.
Exactly.
Our good friend Ryan Dice was running his company, Digital Marketer, and he had a bunch of different, managers and supervisors. So they're like, oh, there's this really good software, and it's 10 grand a year. So one person bought it for his department. Now,
not the
software runs for for the whole business. But another guy's like, oh, that's good. I want that for my department. He ended up buying 5 of them. But he didn't, because everybody had their own individual credit card.
Sure. But nobody was managing the top level.
Right. So when when that happens and you walk into a business, do you do like the assessment? Is
I,
that the first thing you do? And what are
I,
some of the things that you suggest for someone to do their own personal assessment?
so when you're doing that, the very first thing is I want you to look at the past to predict the future, basically. So I want you to go back and start looking at all of the expenses. And yes, I do mean all of them for the last year. And what I do for my clients is once we do that, we take a look at the prior year. And I use Excel, but I get out there and I figure out what all was paid. So we know exactly how often things were paid, what was going on, and then we determine what are those recurring charges. Then I take it one step further. You then have an Excel spreadsheet that says, here's all these charges that come up once a year. So I have what I call my committed expenses because you've committed to these. But I take it even one further step because I like proactivity. So not only do we identify them through this assessment, we figure out what they are, we get a list of them. Okay, if it's say $1,200 for the year, why not start allocating out $100 every single month? So we take it even further and go proactive, and then we start moving that to a separate account so that you know what, when that 1,200 comes again, you're not stressing out how you're going to pay for it. It's already sitting, waiting to be paid.
Right.
But then every time you do that, you add to it. It's one simple list. It's a simple process because that's the key. I'm not going to say it's easy because it's not, but it is
Right.
simple.
And that's where you're doing profit first. Another thing is don't lose your debit card to or credit card to your bank account like I just did.
That's not good.
Yeah. So I'm
That,
transferring thousands of dollars and I'm like, where did my
where'd it go?
I think I threw it in the trash.
Oh, no.
But I turned it off
Well, that's
and
good. I was going to say,
I haven't
please tell
had
me you
any
did.
red flags. But so when you do have multiple accounts, the other thing you will need to make sure, like, is your business at that level? Because you're going to have to keep a certain amount of money in each one of those accounts to where you don't get pinged.
Exactly.
So you can't just open an account and say, well, I'm going to keep $5 in there.
Nope,
Right.
you got to figure out what the rules and regs of each one of those are. And then
Right.
the other thing about QuickBooks, which is one of the ones that reason I like it, is I've got I had a client actually has 23 credit cards. That's
Yeah.
a lot of credit cards. But
Yeah.
you know what? We have our bank account, we have our savings account, and we have 23 credit cards. But we have one system that tracks all that. So when I run that main report out, we can see exactly what we're up against. We know if it's recurring. We know if we still need this. And we're looking at it when I meet with the clients. We're looking to say, is this still needed? Do we need to trim something? Well, here's where we're at. And so we dive into all of that. Because
And it's I live in Arizona, but I'm a member of the San Diego Chamber of Commerce. So
okay.
people are like, why are you paying for the San Diego Chamber when you don't even live there? Well, I came in early bird. So
Aha.
it's about $1,000 a year.
Okay.
I pay $180 a year.
Can't beat it. And if you're getting reach outs and networking and
Right.
clients,
Well, I get their list, I get access to all that stuff. Plus, they have a huge party at the Coronado, what's that, Hotel Del?
okay.
And you're at the Hotel Del. If you've ever been there,
I
it's a
have not.
gorgeous mansion
Oh,
hotel. It's
perfect.
and they rent the main ballroom and Toys for Tots there, uh, Habitat for Humanity, all the military, the mayor.
Oh, wow.
It's a
That's
huge
pretty cool.
ballroom. That in itself is worth, $250, $300 per ticket.
Absolutely.
So I get that added in. So I just fly out there every year
I
and
was going to say, you get a mini vacation.
yeah.
Add a couple
Yeah,
extra.
and then you get to take a picture of yourself at the hotel. So
There you
yeah, so
go.
we're at
And
the
it's a
top of the
business
hour.
expense.
So once again, so you have the Janet Ickes.com website.
I
What would
do.
we be able to find there?
You will actually be able to see the different services that are provided, which range from bookkeeping to accountability and support to training and QuickBooks Online. You also have a couple other downloads that are available, like to discover money you didn't even know that you had. There is a guide out there as well. And plus the different speaking that I have done and different topics that are out there that I love to share. My whole goal is I love to share with folks. So that is out there. Take advantage of it. Love to have folks.
Yeah, and for those of you watching this as a replay, if you do know of any speaking opportunities for someone that needs to speak about the budget, such as what Janet just spoke about, feel free to go to Janet Ickes. That's Janet ICKES.com. Find her, connect with her, and let her know about the speaking opportunity. She's always available to look at an opportunity and make a powerful difference in other businesses throughout the United States and the world. So, Janet, thanks so much for showing up.
I appreciate it.